Hello and welcome to this motivational webinar brought to you by Carla O'Brien. My name is Carla O'Brien and I'm joined by an esteemed panel of extremely talented former Leinster dancers. So what we're going to talk to them about this evening is their competitive dancing careers, their professional dancing careers, but also about the professions and careers that they went on to choose in the dancing afterlife, so to speak. Yeah, there is one. There is a life after competitive and professional dancing. So we're going to talk to them about that this evening. So before we go any further, I'm going to do some introductions. First up, we have Dr. Maria Buffini, clue in the title there. Maria is a doctor. She is a former lead dancer with Riverdance and world medal holder. Next up, we have Orla Clark, member of An Garda Síochána, world champion and lead dancer with Riverdance. Then we have Kevin McCormick, pharmacist, 10-time world champion and lead dancer with Riverdance. We have Colin O'Shea, KPM partner at KPMG, 11-time world champion and lead dancer with Riverdance. And we have Emma Warren, masters in musical theatre, soon to be on the stage of Les Miserables in London, lead dancer with Riverdance, Heartbeat of Home, and world medal holder. You're all very welcome this evening, folks. I should say, so what we're going to do is this part of the session has been pre-recorded. So we are going to chat to the panel very informally. I have some questions and then we're going to go live with a Q&A on Zoom. So please feel free to be thinking about your questions and getting them into us or getting ready to ask the panel live. I should say, I'm from Ulster. I am a dancer and world champion. Lead dancer with Riverdance, and now I'm a journalist with RTE. So whilst tonight is very much about Leinster and very much about Leinster dancers, please feel free, if you have any questions for me as well, I'll be more than happy to answer them in the Q&A. So we'll get started. Colin O'Shea, your first memory of Irish dancing classes?
First memory, I think I was at dancing classes before I was ever conscious of being at dancing classes. I think I spent lots of dancing classes at a pram. I often say to people I grew up in a dancing madhouse, and that's really the only way to describe it. I think I officially was there as a pupil probably in and around about 3.5 or 4 years of age. And I don't have a specific memory of a first day because I was just always there. It was just such a part of life. You know, I can really remember being there in a pram. I mean, it just was such a part of our lives. We were at dancing classes day in, day out, and as soon as we were able, we were helping out. So I genuinely don't have a vivid first day in terms of them because it was just a constant in our lives all the way through.
Brilliant. And I suppose, Emma, what did you think whenever you first joined dancing? Did you love it immediately?
Yeah, I loved it immediately. I'm a bit like Colin as well. Like, I sort of just grew up being around Irish dancing. So my mom taught Irish dancing and we used to have a studio at our back garden. So I sort of grew up learning and being surrounded by dancing there. But then when we moved house and I moved to the Nate Fork School of Irish Dancing, that's when I have more vivid memories of actually going to class. And just, I don't have a specific first memory, but it's just, that's a good thing, I suppose, because it's all happy memories, all fun and laughter and friendships just the whole way through my dancing career, especially early on. So yeah, I loved going to dancing classes from a really, really young age.
And as Kevin, did you feel like there was a certain point where you were maybe juggling going to dancing and being at school?
Not really until late on in secondary school, probably, to be honest. There were 3 classes a week, but they just fitted into a schedule. So it was only getting towards the leaving cert where I kind of had to make sacrifices and give up some other activities. Just I kept on dancing and the academic work basically, and let everything else go at that point. But up until then, it was fine. It was easy enough to fit everything in.
What about you, Maria? Do you remember being at secondary school, maybe at dancing, and going to any? I suppose, could you keep up any kind of social life whenever you were dancing?
Yeah, I remember that was the time where it became difficult, or it started to become difficult to combine both. I suppose, especially towards the end of secondary school when exams became more of a a thing, and your weekends were taken up still with feshes, and you might be going into school again on the Monday really, really exhausted after spending a late night at a fesh the previous night, and you mightn't necessarily have all your work done. So I think at that stage is when you started to feel the strain or the pull a little bit from both ends. So yeah, I think so. Just to mention, I do have a first memory of a dancing class, and that was so I danced for the O'Shea School in Dublin, and that would be Colum's mum and dad. So the lovely late Anya O'Shea, I remember taking her hand, and it was a bit impromptu. My sister would have been there dancing, and I was there, had a pair of probably really dodgy leather boots on as a 5-year-old, and she just took my hand and started teaching me a few bits and pieces, and it was in a really old prefab somewhere that's not there anymore. And I remember just everybody looking at me as the new youngest one and things like that, and you're really self-conscious and everything. But I do have a specific memory of that, and it's lovely when I was looking back on some of the topics to be able to think back on that.
Carla, what age did you start dancing? Did you start really, really young?
I actually started at 6, and I actually was late into being 6 because my two oldest sisters were great dancers, and my mom said, "No, never again. We're not having another dancer." So my mom left me at the dance class, and Emer, my sister, was dancing. And at the time, Phoebe and Siobhan Cullen were my dance teachers, and they actually said they would give me 50p if I would learn the baby reel. And I thought, right. I actually do remember looking at the 50p coin going, that is so cool. Because you know the way it was shaped. And she said to me, "I'll bring you across the shop now," totally bribing me. And as soon as my mum came back after dance class, she said, "Now look what Orla learnt." And I did the whole baby reel in one class with the thought of going to the shop with my 50p.
That is
Yeah, I just, like, my mom used to do crazy stuff. Like, she used to send me to secondary school with the rollers in my hair. Like, talk about scarring me for life. So I remember like some really funny stuff from dancing, but that was my first ever memory of dancing. And it was, I suppose, a juggle then going into secondary school, and you know, having to walk to school with the rollers in and the beret. She used to put a beret on top of my head, yeah. And there was over 1,000 girls in Loretto College in Mullingar, and that's where we used to go. Yeah. And
sorry, just going back a bit. So you got the 50p,
yeah.
And then did you say, right, I'm going again, or what?
What happened then is they were like, "Look, she's a natural now. She learned the whole baby reel there in one class." So that was it then. Actually, after that, I was given the hand-me-down costume, and off I went. And I think, like, I was actually looking back 7 years later, like, I won the Worlds. So like, it was just kind of in me, I think. But like, my older sister won the Worlds as well, and my younger sister. So you know, I suppose it was just in us to dance, like, yeah.
Wow. Sorry, Colm and Kevin, what age were you when you first won?
You go ahead, Kevin.
I was 11, and it was, I think that was 1982 in Galway. I'd been at it. In those days you could qualify from a young age, so I qualified first when I was 7, and so it was my 5th attempt that I managed to win. So
that's so poor. Took you 5 years?
It took me 5 years. Yeah. So yeah, that was it. Yeah.
What about you, Colm?
Well, I was actually second to Kevin the first time he won, and I won the following year when he kindly moved aside and went up an age group, and then I had a bit of a better chance. And luckily I was always 2 years behind Kevin, and it was double age groups at the time, so that certainly helped. So I won under 10. I think in Leisureland in Galway. I think Leisureland in Galway is actually when you won, Kevin, and the following year I can't remember where that was. It might have been in Cork actually, but it's a long time ago, Carla.
And I suppose, you know, getting to the World was such a massive deal. Certainly it was for me. I mean, Emma, how did you feel when you first qualified?
Yeah, the excitement at the Leinster when if anybody qualified was amazing. And actually, the first year that I could qualify was the foot and mouth disease, so we couldn't actually go to the Worlds that year. So it's quite similar to what the dancers are sort of going through this year. So we had to miss out on a whole year. But so the excitement was even bigger then for the next year, because we'd all been waiting for this event and it was our first time to do it. So yeah, it was amazing to finally get to the World when we did.
I suppose, like, obviously we're traveling to Feshna all the time, every weekend. Does anyone have a particular memory of the traveling to Feshna, but also like the crack when you get there? What about you? What about you, Maria?
God, yeah, I suppose you just, looking back on it now, you kind of realize how much time it took up, not only for yourself and for sacrificing other things, but also for your whole family, and the effect that it would have had on them, you know, especially like, you know, I remember talking to Mum a few years ago, like, what did we used to do at Easter? Like, what do we don't have any routine at Easter. Why is that? And she's like, we were always at the Worlds. We were always just grabbing a carvery dinner after the day of dancing or whatever it was, you know, in the West County Hotel or, you know, wherever it may have been at that time. And then oftentimes you'd be there for most of the week because, you know, you might have a sibling who was in a different age group, and then you might be taking part in figures as well, and they'd all be on different days. So yeah, they used to be huge weeks in the year. And yeah, as I said, so time consuming, but like brilliant experiences as well, to just be able to spend that time and such excitement around it, you know, when you were younger, getting all your new clothes together to go to these things for a few days and have fun with your friends outside of doing the dancing. So yeah, they would be my memories of all the travel and time that was involved with it, really.
I suppose, obviously, I mean, as a group, it's clear we all danced very intensively. So there was, well, certainly there may not have been much time for socializing or even a lot outside of school. Did people find that kind of, you know, that there was very much just school and dancing, or was anyone able to really kind of have a social life outside of that?
I actually as well was an athlete. I jumped high jump for Ireland. So I used to, as soon as the Easter holidays stopped, that was my at the World Championships, that was my 1 week off, and then I was into athletics. So I actually would have had national titles for javelin, heptathlon, and high jump and hurdles. So that was to me socializing. I used to go to all the athletics all summer, and then in September I'd go to Mosney. That was one of the nationals as well, and that was a weekend event. And then as soon as that was finished, I'd go back to dancing again. But I played basketball and hockey, and they were all fairly high standard as well.
Wow.
So socializing really wasn't. That was my version of socializing, basically.
And did you find, though, that obviously that level of athleticism must have really helped you in dancing?
Yeah, it did. It actually did, because I just went straight from the World Championships into athletics, and hurdles was my thing, and high jump. And I actually, when I did heptathlon, I had the heptathlon, all the events around my house. We live in the countryside. My parents used to hire a high jump. My dad dug a long jump. We had everything around the house. And that's the way they went with dancing as well. Like, my dad was 100% like, we used to run down to the hall. We used to practice in the hall. He'd run us back. And everything we did 1,000,000%. Yeah. So when he came to see Riverdance the first few times, all he did was cry because he was so happy.
Oh my goodness.
He was so emotional. Yeah. He was just a big softie. Colm's nodding his head. He knows my parents. So
I know them very well.
Yeah. So John James would be sitting there crying in the audience because he was so proud. But we worked hard. We worked really hard to get what we got. And we worked in school.
I was going to say, you know, you're saying obviously he was so proud and so emotional. Is that, you know, obviously he had gone the extra mile, the extra lengths to make sure you guys were the best that you could be?
Yeah, and like you were saying there about going to competitions or going to, like my dad was a farmer and my parents, that's what they did. Like, and I remember my dad having to sell cattle, and for us to go to the World Championships or go to the British Nationals, and like he used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to milk to get to the World Championships, then to drive home that night and milk again. Like, you know, it was just crazy. It was just our lifestyle, like. But yeah, he worked as hard. You know, that's what you have to put in. Everybody knows that. Like, you work hard and you'll get what you deserve when you work hard, I suppose. Yeah.
I suppose on that aspect of working hard, whenever we got to exam stage, you know, where your junior cert, leaving cert, or even leaving cert, did you find a bit of a difference there where you had to devote as much time to study as to dancing, Colin?
There was a little more of a break in the calendar in dancing than there is now. So kind of once the world was over, dancing kind of took a bit of a back seat, and I guess that gap has kind of been plugged now by the Irish nationals. So we probably peaked at Easter, and then the shoes got a bit dusty for the weeks and months after that. But like, you know, there was plenty. Like we would have had dancing, particularly on a Tuesday night, went on until late. My mother never knew when to go home. There was always costumes we talked about, or someone else we thought another step. So you'd regularly be getting home to the house at 10:30 at night and tucking into an essay or tucking into something. But it was kind of the rhythm of the house in many respects. And I don't remember it ever being a burden. I just remember there was just lots of stuff going on, and we just had to get on with it. I think probably it was later, as Kevin says, it became more difficult. And I think in particular, like 94 stands out for me in particular, because in that year we did Riverdance, I did my finals, and I won the world in the men's that year. And I was like, there just wasn't a minute, but it was amazing crack too at the same time. Like I never felt it to be a burden. I was very energized by it, very motivated by all of it. And you know, the academics were also incredibly important to me. So it wasn't a case of one could suffer at the expense of the other. They just both had to be done, and you just got on with it. And there was kind of I didn't live in a house where you got away with moaning or groaning about things. You kind of got on with it and got stuck in.
I suppose that level of intensity where you are working so hard at dancing and so hard at study, did you feel that actually one helped the other, Kevin? Sorry, am I here? Can people hear me?
Kevin might be frozen now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Emma, what do you think? Like, whenever you're working so hard at dancing and it's at school, did one kind of, I suppose, strengthen the other in terms of your work ethic?
Well, I think Irish dancers' work ethics generally are incredible. Like, we're always just working so hard in dance class. You never got away with anything in dance class if you weren't given 100%. So that definitely filtered into school. But for me, I was always wanting to perform and wanting to do music after school. So I guess my teachers at school understood that as well, and they sort of encouraged it in a way. You know, they weren't hard on me, and I wasn't a bold child or anything in school. I was very good. It was just that I always wanted to go and do music. And so as long as I just kept my grades at a certain level and that I got into my course that I wanted to do, my degree, and I was happy enough to keep up the dancing outside of school, because really I felt that it was a great outlet. Like, instead of giving it up to do school, I thought it was brilliant to still go and see my friends in like a safe environment and keep fit and just have fun. Yeah, I mightn't have been as dancing as well as I was before, but I still thought it was a healthy habit to keep up throughout my leaving cert and my junior cert.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose going on to college then, did everyone stick around here in Ireland or go on to third level here in Ireland? Maria?
Yeah.
You all did. And how did you find, I suppose, going to college initially after keeping up? Did you keep up dancing in college?
To myself, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. So I was having a bit of a think about this. I suppose what really helped at that time, you know, going into college, there was such change. You were out on your own, you were more independent, and you know, the contrast between changing from school, being really babysat, to college where you just were, totally out on your own. So that was huge, but I still did attend all my dance classes. I used to be running for the train on a Tuesday evening to try and get back for the dancing, always a little bit late as usual, but got there in the end. But at that time, you know, I suppose dancing with the O'Shea School, we had a huge we had done shows for years and years, you know, kind of corporate things around Dublin and Ireland and things. And by that time, we had started doing Bush Gardens, you know, and we did a show there every summer. So I did that during my college years, and that was really the important link for me at that time that really helped to keep things going, because to do the show during the summer, you had to be keeping your dancing up during the year. So that was a good motivation to keep it up as well. And I would imagine that if there wasn't that driver still there, that it might have fallen away a little bit easier. Whereas that helped to maintain it, and thankfully so, because I probably wouldn't have gone on to do kind of further show stuff after that, you know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Orla, did you go straight from Leaving Cert, or did you do third level in between?
No, so the way it worked out for me was I was in secondary school and I started with the flying squad. So I did that kind of from junior cert up to Leaving Cert. And then straight after, like literally straight after my Leaving Cert, I went off at Riverdance, and I was like, that's it, I'm going for a year, which turned into 6 years. 7 actually, and then I finished a tour of Russia, and the following week I was in the Garda College. Yeah.
Was it the Russian experience that just made you decide?
It just turned me all together. No, it was just I'd had surgery, I suppose, in my ankle, and it was just my time to finish. Yeah, I just had made that decision, and I had 1 week off, and then straight into becoming a guard. So yeah, that's the way it worked out for me anyway.
I suppose we should say flying squad. I'm not sure if that is, do you think is that just a Riverdance term, or is it other shows term? Maybe I don't know, I just kind of associate it with Riverdance, but a flying squad is basically members of maybe the dancing community that aren't full-time in Riverdance or a show, that would go out and do, it's mostly promotional work. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, we went like, I'd say I was only about 17, I think, just gone to when we went to Japan, like for 10 days to do press work, and sure, it was gas, like, but it was great. Like at that stage then I realized that I was getting all the hard work I'd put into dancing, we were getting something back from it, like, you know, holidays away and trips away. Like it was brilliant. Well, it was brilliant. Yeah, so
sorry, Kevin, you're back with us.
I'm back. Yeah, sorry, some difficulty there. Yeah, I lost you.
We might go to you. So we're just chatting about, did you finish Leaving Cert and go into Riverdance then? Or how did that work?
No, I think looking back on it, I was probably in a really fortunate position that I had just finished just the college part of my qualification. So I was in the middle of the professional training, which is a year long, and I was working at a pharmacy on Westmoreland Street in Dublin. And that's when Riverdance happened. So I was lucky in the sense that I had finished school and finished college, which I suppose very few people were in that position at the time. But and also just, I suppose, just the degree I had done, it allowed me to go on the road and to travel. And I know with other people's disciplines that isn't always possible. But I was just very lucky. The timing was perfect, really. Yeah. What
about you, Colin? Obviously, you were in the original Riverdance.
Yeah, with Kevin, and actually of that lineup of dancers on Eurovision, virtually all of us knew each other for many years, and there was an enormous camaraderie between all of us. A huge nucleus came from Mama Dad's school, and plenty of others that we knew from different places along the way. And it was an adventure that none of us ever thought was ever going to come our way, and I don't think any of us knew at all, or had any inclination what it was going to turn into, and in a way that was part of the magic of it, in terms of, it was literally riding the roller coaster. It was such fun, I have to say, those early days. I mean, we worked hard, we partied hard as well, but those sort of long developed bonds from the time we were kids, it was really good, like going away with your best friends on this adventure all together. So extraordinary time, extraordinary good memories of it, and none of us really had an inclination that it was going to be, you know, sort of a quasi second career for any of us. It was just a wave to be ridden at the time, and it was an amazing time, really amazing time.
And like, I suppose for certainly Maria and myself, we were probably at a different time in Riverdance. What were those early days like, Kevin, Colin, Orla?
I think Colin summed it up well. I think, like, none of us really, we had no clue with what we were involved in, really. So, I mean, I suppose there was lots of excitement around the early rehearsals in that everything was new. And we did all know each other for a long time. So we were friends anyway. So the good part of that was that we were getting time to spend with our friends, which we wouldn't have had otherwise also. But it was all new, yeah. And we had absolutely no idea. I mean, when Eurovision happened, we didn't have any idea that the reaction to that would be what it was. And then even I guess it was 8 or 9 months later when the show opened, at the point that we never thought that would, maybe it would last 4 weeks, the initial run, and that would be the end of that. And then within a couple of months, we were in London opening, and we were a month there, and so on and so on. So yeah, I suppose we were just constantly surprised by the next event, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Carla, my expectations on Eurovision were, and like, despite the amazing ovation which Kevin describes that we got there, and that happened through the dress rehearsals that had happened before it as well. Gay Byrne was still doing this radio show at the time, and I thought we'd get, wasn't that lovely mention on Gay Byrne at 10 o'clock, and by 11 o'clock the world would have forgotten about it. I mean, that was kind of the height of my expectation at the time, and how wrong I was.
It is amazing, isn't it though? Like, I remember watching it. I remember I was like, I don't know, I think it might have been 11 or 12, but like tripping around the living room watching Jean Butler do it and trying to learn it in real time what she was doing. Like, but seeing the end was something about the end that, like, you saw Albert Reynolds, Mary Robinson, and they were so with you. It was just incredible. It really is incredible. Whatever way, it just struck a chord at that particular time, and just lit up, you know.
It seems to be one of those things, you know, there are certain things that happen in history, and not to make too big a deal of it, but you know, when JFK died, or when Princess Diana died, and not to talk about death too much either, but Riverdance is one of those things that people seem to remember where they were when they first saw Riverdance. And when you mention you're in Riverdance, or when they realize you're in it, they tell you, oh, I remember that because I was there when that happened. So it's one of those points in time that people relate to.
Yeah. It's funny, actually. Some people will say, I could have gone to Riverdance there now as well. I had a few medals. Loads of people say that to me. I'm like, oh, you're dead right.
Yeah.
So many people, I don't know about you guys, but people say to me now, oh my God, I wish I kept it up. Oh my God, I did. We did classes, we did our sevens. I know my sevens. I should have kept it up. Do people say that to you, Emma?
Yeah. Loads of people say that to me. And even actually just the other day when I was in rehearsals for the show that I'm doing at the moment, when people find out that I've been in Riverdance, they cannot believe it. Like, they just think it's the most amazing thing ever. And these are people who are like at the top of their game in musical theatre and have played lead roles all over the world, and yet they know Riverdance, and they just can't believe that I was a part of it. They just think it's amazing, you know, which is kind of makes me go, oh yeah, no, yeah, it is pretty amazing, because you kind of forget when you're in it, you know.
Yeah,
or you weren't out of it for so long as well. It's had such an impact on everyone.
I mean, I suppose just getting back to people who kind of wish that they'd kept it up. Was there ever a point for anyone, and I'll leave this one open, was there ever a point anywhere where you, throughout your competitive dancing career, where you just said, oh, this is tough, this is a lot? I'm sure there were several times, but are there any kind of standout times for anyone?
Yeah. I know for me, I danced at Grania Feely, and we lived in the Midlands in Westmeath, and we used to have to drive up to the Phoenix Park for lessons, and then we'd drive up to Maynooth other nights. And I remember we used to get home like at 1:30 some nights, and like that Colin was saying, you'd have to do homework. And I do remember thinking, Jeannie Mac, what are we doing? But I suppose it was just a blip, you know. For a few, you'd feel like that, and then you'd go, no, I'm doing this because we love it, and but you'd have them blips all the way along that. But yeah, it was our way of life anyway. So I saw my older sisters doing it, my younger sister was doing it. We just all did it.
It would have been a fairly short conversation in my house if I'd ever brought it up, so I chose not to.
I think
nobody did.
No, nobody did.
Not out loud anyway.
I think my first year in college was everything was changing, but I had an off year with dancing that year, and a few things happened, and some of the competitions didn't go so well and all of that, and I decided to quit. So I suppose a litmus test of how much it meant to me was that I did quit, and I didn't actually dance at the Leinster Championships that year. But within 2 months of that, I missed it so much that I had to go back with my tail between my legs and go into Clonsilla Hall, which Cullen and Maria will know very well, and say to Anya Seamus, please, can I come back and dance again? I just really missed it terribly. So that was, I suppose,
what exactly,
what it meant.
What part exactly did you miss? What put you back in that hole?
I think, well, I mean, I was still involved socially because I was still in touch with my friends. So it wasn't so much the social thing. It was just the physical dancing, I think, and the music. I think that's what it was, really. And it probably had a bigger effect on me, even maybe psychologically, in that than I realized. And it's just, I think I was pining for it, really. Yeah. So.
Maria, what about friends in Irish dancing? Like, I certainly think that the bond that you make as being friends in Irish dancing really stands the test of time. What do you think?
Oh, stop. Where do you start, really? I suppose you can just, looking back on everything, you can only just feel so lucky to have had all the experiences that I think all of us can identify with. You know, that so much of your dancing life was, I suppose, influenced by all those people around you. And I think, you know, being dancing schools vary. Some are more, you know, competitive focused only, others take into account teams and, as I mentioned before, different kind of shows. And you know, the O'Sheas used to take the chance of taking a huge bunch of us away in the summertime to festivals in Italy or France, you know, in our teenage years, or even younger than that. Like, you know, from the age of 10 or 12 up, you might have been on these trips, which is just really unheard of now. But all those experiences growing up really you had such a bond with these friends in the dancing class, you know, such great experiences outside of dancing as well, experience in travel, everything. And, you know, then progressing on to shows, I would have been in Riverdance with a lot of people who were from O'Sheas as well. So we all just kind of went around together like a little pack. And then, you know, you meet all these new people and, you know, myself and yourself, Carla, have had great times together as well. You know, it's just, you just feel so lucky because there are things that, you know, you have so many memories and you have this collection of people that you can look back on them with. And especially now when you've had a good few years of moving on from there, you just kind of, yeah, you wouldn't yeah, you're just so lucky to have had it, really. Yeah, they're lifelong relationships, I think.
And on that, in terms of relationships, I don't know about you, but certainly my dancing teachers were like, they were my flesh and blood. They might as well have been. They were my second mums, my sisters. You know, what about the kind of teacher-pupil bond, Emma? What do you think?
That is so important. I think I've been so close to my teachers. First, Terry and Philip and my mum and Lane. We're all still so close, even though we're spread all over the world now. But when I first started dancing, Terry and Philip lived around the corner from me, and my dance class was like, I never got away with not going to dancing because it was literally a 5-minute walk. I could literally walk to class. Yeah, I think it's really important. Of course, you have to have that line of like listening to your teacher. And that's one of the reasons why I think my mum sent me to another class, because I wouldn't necessarily listen to my mother when I was very young. I definitely would now. But yeah, it's very important to have a good relationship with your teacher, because that's what's going to get the best out of the student then, if you can have a friendship as well as a good bond when it comes to teaching dancing and learning from them, because they know best at the end of the day.
I mean, just to jump in there, Carla, for a second. I mean, I suppose I've seen that on the other end in terms of the relationships my parents had with all of their students, and the extraordinary depth in those relationships that lived long after many of them had given up dancing, and you know, living vicariously through them having their kids and them having their other experiences. But like the amount of worry and fret that they would have had over the years over not their own children but other people's children, and it was a really deep bond, incredibly important to my mum and dad all the way through. And it's amazing how that has persevered in terms of obviously mum's passed on, but even the number of people who still keep in touch with dad, and in terms of the depth of those relationships, the people who are still incredibly good to him, particularly at this point in his life. So those relationships I think are incredibly deep in terms of the shared history and what you've all been through together.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm only speaking from my own experience, but certainly, like, obviously we must all have like an intrinsic work ethic that we apply to dancing, to school, and to life. But I certainly know that I got a lot of that work ethic, perhaps where I may have been lacking in natural ability. I feel that work ethic really kicked in to go, actually, let's make the most here of what you have. And I know that I got that from my teachers. Does anyone have a strong feeling on that one?
Yeah, my teacher was Grania Feely, and she was 10 times world champion. And I always remember looking at her going, how do her feet even do that? Like, but if anyone who knew Grania, she just practiced all the time. She was just a solid, hard worker. And looking at her as I was growing up, I used to, like, I knew then that if you wanted to be good, then you had to do what she did. So like that, you just learn from the best. Yeah, she was the best.
Just staying on that one, I suppose, like, does anyone remember like their practice schedule? Does anyone have like a strong opinion on that one? I just feel at the moment that I certainly know I could have practiced more. What about you guys? Kevin, what do you think?
I think, well, I think probably that the dancers of today would put us to shame from a practice point of view. I probably just didn't, the same level of fitness probably wasn't required then, not to diminish, I think, what we did, but I think now that the dancers need to be much fitter, and what they're doing is a lot more athletic. And so my practice schedule had to fit around schoolwork, to be honest. So it was, and we lived in a small semi-detached house. We had wooden boards in the living room, and at one point, and in the garage at another point, and we just danced in the evenings when homework was done. Then you dance, but I mean, it was probably an hour at night. It wasn't any more than that, and 3 classes a week, and maybe some extra classes before big competitions. So it wasn't, time-wise, it wasn't huge, but I think for dancers now, it's probably a lot more.
I suppose going on then, obviously, people, did dancing affect your decision in career choice for anyone? Was it stand out for anyone?
Not at the time, not at the time when I chose it, but in hindsight, it was probably a good choice, because it allowed me to go to Riverdance and to be, when I registered as a pharmacist, I ended up 9 years out of pharmacy before I found my way back to it. And over 5 of those years was with Riverdance. And then I went back to college and did some other things. But pharmacy is is a profession that probably allows you to do that where many others wouldn't. So in retrospect, it was a good choice, and it fitted in well with the dancing, but I wasn't really to know that when I chose it.
Maria, tell us about your pathway to becoming a doctor.
It was long and convoluted. Look, I suppose the overarching thing would be that I didn't have a solid plan along the way. And I think you very much approach different aspects of your life in terms of your priority at the time. And I think it's important to follow your gut with certain things. And, if you feel strongly to go for something, like if it was to go to the show, to be successful, to be a lead dancer, and you wanted to put all your energy into that, then that's okay to put study on hold and do that for a while. I think my first degree was in science, so I had that background anyway. And then, as I said, I just knew that I would do Riverdance. I just knew I had to do it. So that's, I didn't work in science after that ever. And then, as Orla said before, you plan on going to the show for a year, maybe 2, and then that turns into 7. And then at that stage, you're kind of like, okay, where am I now? What am I going to do? And, you just kind of go through phases in your life where you're kind of starting to reprioritize different things and recategorize things in your head. And it was really based on the fact that I knew that I would probably go back to something academic, the fact that I knew it had been such a long time that I would need to retrain in something substantial at the time. And I suppose there would have been a little bit of a background interest there all the way along. So I just decided, okay, we'll give it a go. And there was an exam to get into the graduate entry approach to medicine. And then I was offered a place. And I suppose kind of like Orla as well, it made my decision. And, you know, one week, it was the end of August 2012, I was performing in the Gaiety Theatre in Riverdance. And then the very following week, I was across the road in the anatomy lab in RCSI doing dissections. And that was a crazy jump from one thing to the other. So, you know, it wasn't necessarily planned out, but I think things just kind of fall different ways as your life goes along, and you just kind of have to be mindful of your priorities, and that, you know, you can't have a solid plan. You need to recategorize all the way along, I think.
Obviously, we were all in the shows before kind of beginning real life. Did anyone have a strong experience going from show life, tour life, Irish dancing life to the other life? Colin, go on.
Well, I was probably in a similar boat to Kevin insofar as I was lucky enough to have my finals out of the way actually the Eurovision happened in September. I did my finals. So I was incredibly lucky in terms of having that out of the way going out. I was qualified as a chartered accountant. The last couple of years, you typically are working. So I was working full time through those last couple of years. And actually through the first run of the show in Dublin, I was working during the day and through rehearsals. And in fact, during the first run of the show in Dublin, I was actually working with a client in Cavan and driving up and down from home in the morning to Cavan to do my day's work, then to drive back to the, kind of well used to that. And I had made my decision to leave the show when we came back to Dublin in 2000, had 3 weeks off and went back in there. Like I was incredibly lucky. I was with KPMG before going off to Riverdance. They were incredibly supportive and letting me go off and doing that, kind of recognized, and this was something I wanted to do. But I do think you know, a lot of the disciplines that were ingrained in us in terms of just having to work hard and slog at it kind of stood me in good stead to sort of get stuck back in. And 3 weeks later, I wasn't doing dissections, but I was off doing audits, and it was back at it. And you know, I think the dance teaches you an awful lot of practicality in terms of work out what you need to do the work, do the practice, and you'll get there. And I think those disciplines have stood me really well in the years since.
Obviously, did you go straight into musical theatre after dance, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, well, I did about 5 years with Riverdance, and I always had this itch to go back and do musical theatre. I did musical theatre like all through school and outside of school and outside of my Irish dancing. I kept it up, but I knew that I needed to train properly in musical theatre. I had done a music degree in Dublin, which wasn't what I wanted to do at the time. It was a classical opera degree, and I really just wanted to be doing musical theatre, but there was nothing around Dublin at the time that was a degree. So I did that course, and then I still kept up my performing outside of that. I actually did Irish Celtic tour. Do you remember that, Carla? We did that together.
Yes.
Yeah. I was still doing that degree. So I got my little fix outside of college, and I did my traveling with the shows when I could. And when I joined Riverdance, then I still had that itch. So I knew that my Irish dancing life wasn't going to last forever, because it's so high impact on the legs, and you know, we can't dance at that level forever. So I decided to apply for a master's degree, and lucky that I did do my degree, because then I could just do a 1-year course in musical theatre. And so that's what I decided to do. I finished in the Gaiety in 2016, and then I flew to Cardiff and I did my master's there for a year, and from there then I got into musical theatre shows.
Sorry, just getting back to what you're saying, obviously you said you needed your fix and that you got your fix.
Yeah,
like
that's what it was like. Because the degree course wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing. So I managed to do little tours like that Irish Celtic tour, and I also did a BBC show, Over the Rainbow, at the time, which was a couple of weeks.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. You were brilliant.
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. So I got to do all those things while I was still in college. And then I actually ended up leaving college a year early. So college, I should have done 4 years, which would have given me an honours degree in music, but I just got an arts degree, which was fine for me because I'd gotten into Riverdance. So it was a no-brainer for me. I had to go and do Riverdance. And I was glad, though, that I finished at least the 3 years and I could at least have a degree, you know. But yeah, it wasn't exactly the path that I wanted to go at the time, but now I'm so glad. So I do always think things happen for a reason. And like Maria said, you just have to kind of go with the flow and reevaluate as you go. And you'll get to where you want to be eventually, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Orla, you were saying you were on the stage in Russia 1 minute, and was it Templemore?
Yeah, Templemore, the Guard College, the very next week, actually. Yeah, it was. I actually had wanted, always in my head, I wanted to be a PE teacher because of my sport, the athletics background, and I had deferred PE in England 3 times when I went to Riverdance, and then they were like, "No, you can't keep deferring." So I ended up in the Guards, and exactly what the girl said. You do find your place. I ended up going off and studying strength and conditioning and personal training. And now I'm in the Garda College, back in the Garda College after being out like for 10 years. I've been in the college now for the last 6 years where I instruct all the physical aspects of the job, like handcuffs, batons, pepper spray, self-defense. So I'm back full circle, you know, doing kind of where I wanted to be, but in the Guards doing it.
Sorry, go on, tell us about, so like, are there any aspects of dancing, show dancing, anything, what comes back to you whenever you're in your day job?
For me?
Like, do you find yourself, do you know, what are the comparisons?
There is absolutely no comparison. But I know, like, I could be on the self-defense mats and I might have a little hop and skip and a dance around while nobody else is looking. But I'm always, when I used to be out on checkpoints, back when I was working in Port as a guard, I was always kind of dancing at the checkpoints, which is funny because that's then I ended up dancing on that Jerusalem video in full Irish dance, or like in my full Garda uniform, and I never actually thought I could combine the two together. And it was the first time I was actually able to say I'm a guard who danced. It was, you know, and that people.
And Anna, did they ask you or did you volunteer? Tell me how that happened.
Well, we had been challenged by another police in Europe to do it, and I had actually been contacted by the press office to say, can you put an Irish twist on it?
Okay.
And I know what they originally were thinking, that I do a bit of dilly-eyed low, like kind of a thing. But I was like, straight away, I was like, right, I've got it. Cars, like, you know, I had the whole thing planned. And I asked a few of the girls I work with, will you just stand behind me? And they were like, oh, and like that, they were like, oh my God, we're going to dance with a river dancer. So it just worked out so well. In fairness, it was the way he videoed it as well. It just looked great, like with the drone and, you know, as I said, the cars. I knew that would win me over there with the flashlights.
Have you had many people like coming up to you about that, or like what's the feedback?
Oh yeah, like all my students that I would instruct, and actually an awful lot of guards I've worked with for years, most of them didn't know that I ever danced. They don't see me, and they see me as the guard who teaches how to strike a baton. Like, they don't see me as the Irish dancer. So yeah, I've had so many people. It's been amazing, actually, because like that, all the dancers I dance with that live in Australia or America, wherever, they all got back in contact going, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, yeah, it was great. It was a great way for me to get back in contact with everyone.
Just getting back to Emma, what you were saying about getting your fix, does anyone have an outlet at the moment that they, obviously some of you are involved in teaching, but what are there any other aspects to life that you find yourself, oh, I need to stay physically fit, or I need to look after my mind, or what aspects of dancing life can it transfer into real life? Does anyone have any kind of standout examples of that?
Well, for me to connect back to dancing, I actually now work with a few dance schools in relation to strength and conditioning, and I'm really enjoying that, because the little connection back to dancing, doing something I love. Like it's and just as Kevin was saying, like the training kids do now is just amazing. Like they are real athletes. So that's my little connection. And my daughter has started dancing as well. So I held her back until she was like, she's 6 now, nearly 7, and she's chomping at the bit to get dancing. So they're my little connections to the Irish dancing world at the moment.
Anyone else have any kind of any links back that they just have to have?
I think the dancing, I think it focused us, and particularly, well, for me anyway, when I moved into the show, into Riverdance, and fitness became a big thing. It hadn't always been. I was one of those kids that put on weight very easily when I was young. So September was an awful month for me because I'd had a little break in the summer and I had to go back to class. I think Anya and James used to shudder when they'd see me come in with the extra pounds on, and it would take the Leinster Championships for me were always really difficult because I was never fit enough because it was too close to the new term and I hadn't had time to lose the weight. But I think it's out of the shows and probably originated in the dancing, but then through the shows, I think we're all probably very aware of our fitness. For me, it depends on the time. It depends how busy I am, whether I get a chance to actually do anything exercise-wise. I go through phases of doing a lot and then other phases not doing very much at all. But it's always at the back of the mind. So I think that's a really good thing that we're conditioned to think that way and to think about our bodies and how we should be,
Yeah, I still compete with athletics actually. I'm a master athlete. Yeah, still.
In which
discipline? 200 and 400. So I would have run in the All Ireland indoors last March, just before COVID. That would have been my last competition because of obviously COVID. Now everything stopped. But yeah, I think it's just in you as well. You, as Kevin's saying, like you that striving, competing, still hasn't left me after all these years. I can't help myself.
Okay, so did anyone, we didn't actually talk about injury. Was anyone like significantly injured throughout their dancing career?
I had surgery and that on my ankle. It was meant to be 6 months off, but after 6 weeks, you know yourself, back on the stage, shoe taped onto the foot. My ankle was about that big. Yeah, but that was my big kind of injury.
Yeah, I would have struggled for a while with kind of groin problems in the show, kind of adductor tears and different things like that, that I would have had to take a lot of time off, which is difficult. And then I broke my foot as well one summer in the Gaiety. And that's hard to deal with at the time because it automatically removes you no options from what you're used to doing day in, day out, and that's a difficult place to be. And I think those experiences, or breaking my foot for me, was probably one of the times where it kind of triggered in my head, what, this is not forever, your body can't, well, like Emma was saying, it is unfortunately a limited shelf life, and you do have to, you have these moments, I think, that start to realign your path and what you might do next, so I think that was one of those for me, but recovered well from each time and kept dancing after. But yeah, I think there's these little things that happen along the way that trigger a new path in your mind.
Just on that, and we might finish up here in this question, but I want to ask it to everyone. If you had one piece of advice to give to dancers who are at varying stages of their dancing career in the competitive world, what advice would you give them, Emma?
I would advise just to really trust the process, even if it's something that you're doing at the time that's not necessarily what you think you want to be doing. It all leads to the next thing, and you will get where you want to be eventually. I feel like my competitive career and into my dancing career, kind of, that's what happened to me. I wasn't always where I wanted to be, but it led to where I wanted to be, if that makes sense. So I think just really stick at it, and Irish dancers have the best work ethic, I think, so that will always stand to you then when you go out into the big bad world in whatever career it is that you decide to do. Yeah, I think everyone will probably connect with different things that we were saying, we're all from such different careers now. So I just think trust what you want to do, and it will work out in the end. Yeah.
Colin, what do you think?
I'd say, looking back on it, what you'll take from it won't be the medals you won or the cups you won, and like, despite the fact that I was lucky enough to have an awful lot of success, it's not what I cherish in terms of memories. It's actually the people, it's the friendships, it's the experiences. So I think sometimes we can get very caught up in terms of, you know, I only got 62.5 from such and such a judge, and I probably thought I deserved 75. Those things will be long forgotten, but what will be remembered is the memories shared, and the enduring legacy of those friendships and those bonds with the people you went through the journey with. So I'd maybe suggest them maybe to let the little disappointments go and look at the bigger picture if they can at all.
Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Colin's put it very well. I'd say not to dwell too long on the bad days. You know, in any competitive activity, there's going to be good days and bad days. So I'd say don't dwell too long. Dwell long enough to get you back into the rehearsal space and to get working hard and trying to be better the next time, but not to dwell otherwise too long on it. And like Colin says, for me personally, all these years later, I mean, my legs move nothing like they used to. And I feel it. If I try to dance now, I feel it like a lot. But I think really, you know, what I have and what I'll always have, probably hopefully till I take my last breath, is that when I hear the music, and sometimes I've had a really bad day at work or a tough day at work, I'm driving home and I just put on some music, and straight away my fingers are tapping, my feet are tapping, the legs don't have to move at all. I can still imagine myself dancing on the stage, and that is something incredibly valuable. And I just say to the younger dancers, enjoy your competitive career, and it will end, but you'll always have the music and just that relationship with it, and with the dance and the memory of the steps. You'll always have it, and it's something that you can pull on when you need some support, or when you need just, you know, a stress breaker really, and it works like that for me anyway.
What about you?
Myself, is it?
Orla, sorry. Orla, what about you?
I would like, the advice there is just fantastic. It is about enjoying the process. Try not to dwell, as Kevin was saying, like every elite athlete, and dancers are elite athletes, will have bad days, but the bad days actually make you stronger to become and get the good days. So you just have to have them bad days. Don't look at them and go, Jesus, that was a terrible dance class, I'm never going back there again. You learn from that and you move on. And I suppose a good tip, even as a strength and conditioning coach, if I was to give advice, would be document, take a diary, write a training diary, and write down what you're doing. And sometimes at the end of the week, you might actually look back and you might think that you've done hours and hours and hours of work, but realistically, you mightn't have done or even managed your hours as well as what you should have. So I would always say, write it down. And if something needs work, or you were told in your dance class that something needs work, write it in your training diary. And then when you have your hour at home, that's what you're working on. And so that's what I would say in relation. My advice.
Brilliant. Maria, what about you?
I suppose comes to my mind that, you know, everyone has different qualities and different aspects of things that they're good at and that they're going to excel at. I know competition dancing can be all consuming, but I'm aware that, you know, in the group of people here on this discussion at the moment, I am by no means a champion dancer. I would have been always more of a kind of a top 20 kind of placer, you know, and that's fine with me. But when, you know, things like shows and that came along, I think that's where I felt a lot more comfort and a lot more natural and a lot more determination to strive to be better at that. And for whatever reason that is, but I suppose I would just, you know, if there's people who feel, oh, you have to be of a certain standard, I'd love to do shows, but I don't feel like I'll ever be good enough to do that or to get in, you know, I would just try and reassure them that there's so much more to that aspect of dancing than just having a certain grade of a medal. You know, and if you do, it comes back to work ethic again, and it comes back to kind of going for what you want to do. But you know, there might be a world champion dancer who finds it really difficult to perform on a you know, performance stage to a crowd, and there might be somebody who's a perfectly good dancer who's just way more natural than that. So I think it's just important to remember that we all have different abilities, you know, and some of them might be more able to make you a world champion dancer, and some of them might be more able to make you a lead dancer, or you know, you just be a good professional dancer. So you know, I suppose just to give a little bit of perspective there as well, that there's a lot more scope and opportunity than just competition, even though that would feel all consuming at the time.
Absolutely brilliant answer to finish on as well. Thank you so much. I feel I've learned a lot myself here, sitting in the company of such esteemed colleagues and peers, friends. So what we'll do now is we finish this up, and then we will go on to our Q&A. So thank you so much, everyone.